So as you guys know, I happen to be invested in Tesla stock, and because I'm always researching the company and looking for different news articles, Google knows this, so they often recommend a ton of different articles and reports about Tesla. Well, I'm scrolling through my newsfeed today and I ran into multiple articles saying that Tesla is losing market share, and that naturally catches my attention, so I have to click on them. Well, apparently there's an analyst saying that Tesla is losing market share in Europe and that it's a direct result of increased competition from Audi and Jaguar. So I found that to be very interesting. So I want to see who this analyst is. I want to see what he has to say. And then I think that it'll be fun. And I think it's also important for me to be able to defend my position whenever a kind of bearish thesis comes out on a stock that I own. So I want to try to defend my position against his points, and then I want to also try to offer some counter arguments to some of the things that he has to say. So I think this will be a very fun video. I hope you guys enjoy this. Make sure you hit the like button if you do, and let's go ahead and get started. What's up everyone, my name is Ale. Welcome back to my world of stocks. Okay, so let's go ahead and start by taking a look at who this analyst is and what are some of the things that he has to say. Okay, now there's many different articles about this, but let's just take a look at this one from CNBC, since they're usually the most widely used media outlet out there, and they seem to have the most influence, at least when it comes to stocks. And here it says that Bernstein, which is like a research and investing firm, thinks that an increase in competition abroad is responsible for the weakness in Tesla's sales volume, and they quote their analyst named Tony Sacconaghi as saying that the deteriorating sales of the Model S and the Model X is primarily due to competition from Jaguar and Audi, particularly in Europe. It goes on to say that the stock dropping by over 30% this year is due to deliveries failing in the Model S and the Model X every quarter, which by the way I completely disagree with. I think there's a lot of short selling involved in that, and I think that they had a weak first quarter from the fourth quarter, not to mention the entire trade war going on that continues to drag down the market. I think there's really a lot of things being left out here, but anyway, they blame it on weaker sales and that it's a direct result of increased competition from luxury vehicles like the Audi e-tron and the Jaguar I-Pace, and he claims that it can get worse when Mercedes and Porsche release new vehicles as well. And it finishes by saying that the total market for luxury electric vehicles has only grown modestly in the last couple years, resulting in Tesla's sales decreasing because the market isn't growing by very much and Tesla is losing market share. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, but I think we can all agree that there are two primary arguments that this analyst is trying to get across. And that's number one, that Tesla is losing market share to Audi and Jaguar, and then number two is that the market isn't growing by very much, at least when looking at luxury EVs in Europe. But before I challenge these two claims, let's first take a look at who this analyst is and see if he's even credible. Now, taking a look at his tip ranks profile, it actually looks pretty good. He's ranked very high at 211 out of over 5,000 analysts. He has a 69% success rate with 70 out of 101 ratings being successful, and he has a 21.4% average return, which by the way for an analyst is actually very high. So overall, I'd say that this guy is definitely credible, at least based on his performance so far. However, I do notice that something is a little weird, and that's that he's always given Tesla a hold rating in the past 31 straight times that he's rated the stock, yet his price target for the stock is at $325 a share, which would be an increase of over 50% from its current price. And that's something that I've personally never liked about analysts. It's so convenient to give a mildly bearish thesis on a stock and never give it a buy rating, yet you still have a price target that is over 50% higher than where the stock is trading, just in case the stock does actually shoot up and your entire thesis is proven wrong. In which case the analyst can just say, see, I told you so, I called it, I said that it would trade that high. But alternatively, if the stock goes down, he can also say, well, I never gave it a buy rating, so I was proven right there too. But if the analyst really believes in the price target that they give, then why wouldn't they just give it a buy rating? Apparently a 50% gain in a stock, which by the way is more than double what his annual return is, still isn't good enough to warrant a buy rating for some very weird reason, and that's something that I do find shady. But other than that, he does look pretty credible overall. And for the purposes of this video, let's go ahead and give him the benefit of the doubt, and let's assume that he's not very biased and that his claims are true. So let's now take a look at the two primary arguments that he made, and let's see if I can defend my position and maybe offer some counter arguments to them as well. Okay, so the first argument was that Tesla is losing market share from Audi and Jaguar, primarily in the Model S and the Model X, and primarily in Europe. Okay, so I did a lot of research and collected the sales in Europe for each of the four models mentioned: the Tesla Model S, the Model X, the Audi e-tron, and the Jaguar I-Pace, and I collected the sales for every single month this year up to June, and then I added those up to get a total count at the end of the chart here that I created. And this information is sourced from Car Sales Base. Okay, so as you can see, this analyst is in fact telling the truth. The Model S and the Model X totals around 3,000 to 4,000 deliveries so far this year, while the Audi and the Jaguar both total north of 6,000, which is substantially higher. However, I do think that there's a couple of facts being conveniently left out. For one, there was actually a narrowing of the gap in June. In fact, the Jaguar actually fell to become the lowest selling vehicle of the group during that month, while the Tesla Model S actually climbed to be the highest. So yes, up to June, the Audi and the Jaguar definitely sold more in total, but despite the Model S and the Model X being older designs than the newer Audi and Jaguar, they were still able to catch up in June. Maybe there is an excuse for that, but I'm just stating the facts that the Teslas did in fact catch up in the month of June, which is the last month that I could find this information for, and that's something that I don't think should be left out so conveniently. Okay, now another thing that I think is being left out of the articles that I happen to read is the 5 billion gigaton elephant in the room, which is the Tesla Model 3. In fact, if you do a simple search in the article's webpage for the Model 3, you will find that there is absolutely zero mention of the vehicle in the entire article, despite it being Tesla's best-selling vehicle. Now, you could argue that it's not being included because it's clearly a cheaper vehicle targeted towards a different demographic, but if you're going to say that the Audi and the Jaguar are causing Tesla to see weaker sales, then you should also be willing to consider the possibility that people may just be opting for a cheaper alternative that still offers unbelievable performance rather than spending an enormous amount of money on something that isn't exactly necessary. And when we add the sales figures for the Model 3 into our chart, we can see exactly why anybody would want to hide this information, because it clearly doesn't fit their narrative. In fact, the Tesla Model 3 completely eclipses all other vehicles combined at over 37,000 deliveries up until June. So if anything, I'd say that it's much more likely that the Model 3 is what's hurting the Model S and the Model X sales more than anything else. And at the end of the day, if we combine all Tesla vehicles together, the chart looks even worse for Audi and Jaguar, as they top over 45,000 deliveries. And you also have to keep in mind that Audi and Jaguar have home court advantage, while Tesla is still having to import their vehicles into Europe, but we know that they're working on building a new gigafactory in Europe in the future, and that should help even the odds when that happens. For example, if we take a look at the United States, where Tesla actually is the one that has home court advantage, we see that the story completely changes. And here we have data all the way up until July, and we can see that the Audi and the Jaguar are only at around 1,000 to 2,000 deliveries, while the Tesla Model S and the Model X hover around 8,000 to 10,000 in deliveries. So you can see just how easily home court advantage can skew the numbers. And again, this isn't even including the Model 3. If we were to toss the Model 3 up on our chart, we can see that it's in a completely different universe, breaking north of 80,000 deliveries. But again, that wouldn't really fit the narrative, so it's best to just leave it out of the equation. Okay, so that was the first argument, that Audi and Jaguar are stealing some market share, and I think we showed that there is some truth to that in Europe. But I think we also showed that it doesn't exactly paint the whole picture if you conveniently leave out some key pieces of information. Now, the second argument is that the market isn't really growing by much in Europe, and I think that it's important to note that the analyst seems to be pointing more so towards the luxury EV market. And that might actually be true. I'm not exactly sure how to value that specific market itself, but based off of the sales of the Audi and the Jaguar and the Model S and the Model X, and based off of what these articles had to say, I'd have to give them the benefit of the doubt and admit that maybe the luxury EV market isn't growing by a very high amount, at least at this time. However, my counter argument comes in the form of, who cares? I don't think that Tesla is trying to target the luxury EV market. And I also think that it's a little bit short-sighted to try to analyze Tesla's stock and even give it a little bit of a bearish analysis by only looking at the luxury EV market, which is what these articles actually did. Now, to me, it's obvious that Tesla cares much more about the larger consumer market that can spend an enormous amount of money, and that's why they've launched a cheaper Model 3 sedan that is selling incredibly well and can be easily considered a cheaper, smaller alternative to the Model S sedan. They will also be launching the Model Y crossover SUV soon that will be a much cheaper alternative to the more expensive and larger Model X SUV. And then they even have plans to launch a pickup truck that Elon Musk has stated will cost around $50,000, which is actually quite affordable when you compare it to other very popular trucks from Ford and especially Chevy. Chevy definitely has some very expensive trucks as well. So there's no doubt that Tesla is no longer aimed at just the small luxury market where EVs are only available to those with giant pockets, but are instead trying to target a much wider consumer base. And so with that context in mind, Tesla doesn't have a slow growing market at all, even in Europe. In fact, when we look at newly published data from JATO, which is an automotive research firm, the global sales of pure electric vehicles during the first half of the year have grown by close to 100%, which they note is a substantial increase considering the challenging situation facing the vehicle industry worldwide. In other words, ICE vehicle sales are slumping while electric vehicle sales are soaring. And even if we narrow our focus down to just Europe, they note that there was still growth of BEV registrations in the continent by 84% this year, and they note that it is also due to the introduction of cheaper new models. That's interesting, right? Because the Model 3 actually qualifies as a cheaper new model, yet the reports that I looked at didn't even want to mention the Model 3 at all. So in conclusion, I don't really have any problem with the things that this analyst had to say, or the fact that these news sites cited him as a reliable source, because I actually do think that he seems a little bit credible, and he's obviously had a lot of success in the market, at least in the past. But I also think that there's a clear bias here against Tesla, and there are key pieces of information that are conveniently being left out, at least in the articles that we looked at. Now, maybe this analyst did mention all of these other points somewhere else, but because I'm not a client of Bernstein, I wouldn't really have any information on that other than what I read in these articles. And I think that it's clear from here that certain facts are being left out because they don't fit the narrative that Tesla is a failing company because of increased competition, which I think is a little bit of a stretch to make that claim, at least at this time. Now, Tesla definitely has a lot of issues. Profitability would be one of the ones definitely up there for me personally, but I also think that they have a lot of future potential. So I think that it's important to keep an objective eye on Tesla's stock going forward. Anyway, that's just what I think. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down below, so make sure you leave them down there as well. And even if you're bullish or even if you're bearish, I know a lot of people are shorting Tesla stock. I would still love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section. So make sure you leave a comment. I'll try to reply to as many as I can. And I think that just about does it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure you hit the like button. It really helps the channel. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.